Welcome back to Villains Too Stupid to Win. Today we're paying a visit to the resident series of our favourite snarky Vulcan. We're taking a look at Seska from Star Trek Voyager. Stardate 48307.5, Federation Starship Voyager is busy doing the Cardassians' dirty work, searching for a rebel Maquis vessel in the notorious Badlands, an area of space that more than lives up to its name when a Tetryon something wave blows in and spirits away both ships all the way to the Delta Quadrant on the other side of the galaxy. And it turns out this whole thing was orchestrated by this creepy alien who was abducting and experimenting on groups of people from various parts of the galaxy, then stranding them in the Delta Quadrant for life. But that's only if you're lucky enough to survive his dangerous transportation method. And surprising no one at all, this elaborate scheme was just an underhanded method of getting laid. He then has the audacity to accept the title of caretaker. And so, Janeway, being one of these annoying Federation types, blows up their only means to get back to the Alpha Quadrant, because enforcing Federation values in the Delta Quadrant is apparently more important than getting her crew home alive. Hey, I'm calling Seska stupid, that doesn't mean she was wrong about everything. And so, with the Valgene destroyed, the Maquis and Starfleet are forced to put their differences aside and work together, merging both crews on Voyager for their 70-plus year journey home, much to the dismay of one Maquis member in particular, seemingly a typically surly Bajoran woman. It's eventually revealed that Seska has another reason to be so salty, because she's actually a Cardassian intelligence agent, genetically altered to appear Bajoran and tasked with infiltrating the Maquis. Seska slowly but surely develops from a rabble-rouser to a fully realized femme fatale, weaponizing her sexuality and even a baby to control the men around her and turn things in her favor. An archetype which I'm sure won't go down well with some in internet land. But to them, I'd like to introduce the emotionally manipulative and unstable basket case Ducat, who as a mass-murdering rapist probably represents the worst men have to offer. So maybe it's just Cardassians, though I guess they're not all that bad. But hey, we can't expect pedantic modern values in a 90s show that has a guy of Mexican heritage playing a Native American consulted by a white con man pretending to be one. But oh look, they have a black Vulcan on the bridge crew now, a biracial woman for a chief engineer, and the first female captain leading a series. All is well. Also, the first female entrant in Villains Too Stupid to Win. The trouble is, inclusion in this series isn't necessarily a good thing. So put your shields to maximum, divert auxiliary power to the weapons array, and keep the self-destruct on standby, as we check out Seska's self-sabotaging quest to alienate the crew of the only vessel on its way back to the Alpha Quadrant. Point 1. Seska's best option was just to sit back and make do. Okay, so Seska has found herself on the other side of the galaxy, surrounded by enemies, so in other words, she's in more or less the same boat as everyone around here. You might as well just make the best of it.
The strongest tactical move is always the one in which you will reap the highest gain at the lowest cost.
Already used to some form of command structure, Seska shouldn't have too much trouble fitting in. She wouldn't want to draw attention to herself unnecessarily, being an undercover Cardassian spy and all, but laying low just ain't how Seska rolls. As an apparent Maquis, some level of Starfleet hate could act as a bit of a cover, but Seska takes it way too far, allowing herself to become embittered by Janeway's decision to destroy the Caretaker's array, her reluctance to compromise Federation values in any way, and her constant time wasting charting every gaseous anomaly. She's a hot-head intelligence officer who seems to have trouble adapting to an unexpected situation. How is she still alive? Before Seska infiltrated the Maquis, she was undercover on Bajor for years. And if you think the Federation is annoying, wait until you have to hang around Bajorans for more than 5 minutes.
Your pie is strong, my child.
Seska should be well accustomed to enduring insufferable cultures. She also doesn't have that much to complain about, all things considered. Despite being a highly disagreeable person and a Maquis, she's been given the rank of crewman, though she often gets mistaken for a higher rank than she deserves.
Where's Ensign Seska?
Commander Seska is revealed to be a Cardassian spy.
But that won't stop Seska from stirring up trouble at every opportunity.
We heard that Captain Janeway's going to put her in the brig for 2 months.
The very first time we encounter her, she's sharing baseless gossip, encouraging Chakotay to start a mutiny, and racking up the other Maquis crew members.
We just want you to know that if things do get out of hand, we're ready to back you.
And from there, things only get way more grand in scale. Seska lives and breathes attention-grabbing clandestine activities. It's like she's actually trying to blow her cover.
Calm down. You're going to draw attention to yourself.
When some of the crew hear of the Sicarian spatial trajector, which could possibly knock off half or more of Voyager's journey, naturally Seska is all over it, emotionally manipulating B'Elanna into running simulations on the trajector by invoking some BS story about getting back for her brother's birthday.
My brother's birthday is in 4 days. Last year I promised I'd meet him on Nivok.
Catching wind of a Sicarian black market dealer willing to trade the spatial trajector for Voyager's library. She then pushes B'Elanna into making this illicit trade without Janeway's authorization, this time using the plight of the Maquis back home to pull on her heartstrings.
Right now, our people are still fighting Cardassians, dying for our cause. Settlers in the demilitarized zone are still under attack.
And disappointing as it is to point out, even our head of security Tuvok is in on this shit, in what is probably the most disturbing moral compromise our lawful good boy ever makes.
I have not always been particularly partial to your methods either.
When it becomes apparent the trajector was never going to work with Starfleet technology, Seska acts the devil on B'Elanna's shoulder once again, encouraging her to cover it all up.
Are you crazy? We don't have to take the blame for this.
Even her constant prodding of Chakotay is ultimately pointless. He may be willing to make a few more moral compromises than Janeway, but he's definitely not at Seska's level. She would no doubt find herself disappointed in his leadership as well. Chakotay supported Janeway's decision to destroy the array after all. The most tragic part about Seska's lack of effort around fitting in is she already had the range of skills required to do really well around here. Seska demonstrates that she's technically proficient, highly adaptable, and possesses creative problem-solving abilities. It would almost be a recipe for success if her decision-making wasn't quite so terrible. If I were an Obsidian Order agent stuck in Seska's situation, I'd be siphoning off valuable intel, resources, and technology, and then just sit back and resign myself to contacting my handlers if Voyager ever gets in range.
You may request asylum with the Federation if you wish. Then we'll be able to protect you.
And if she really can't bear these Federation sticklers any longer, she could strike out on her own at any time. I'm sure Janeway would give her a suitable drop-off. She might even get a shuttle if she plays her cards right. Voyager apparently has an infinite supply of them after all. Now she could sell off any good stuff she's jacked. Surely even tech schematics could fetch a high price in the right market. And this galaxy seems to be littered with gullible civilizations who overvalue human entertainment. Now you can buy a ship and maybe even technology that could assist you in the journey.
That way we would have a better chance of getting where we want to go.
But unfortunately, Seska just doesn't seem capable of thinking this long term. And so, not content to just relax and make the best of it, Seska comes to the erroneous conclusion that the fastest way home will be to side with an alien faction and plot against Voyager. She's all about building a base of power in an area of space there's no reason to stick around in. And it doesn't help that her choice of ally is so utterly abysmal. Point 2. Seska bets it all on a stupid sci-fi civilization, puts most of her energy into toying with Chakotay. So it turns out Seska's supposed salvation lies with a pack of dumbasses called the Kazon Nistrum, one of many warring Kazon tribes, sects, that will inevitably get their own video. Seska gets underway by covertly contacting the Nistrum, meeting them in some caves during an away mission, and handing over that sweet replicator technology. In exchange, Voyager will get some sort of unspecified protection from the Kazon. What these knuckleheads could do to protect Voyager, who could say? But it's not a very logical trade no matter which way you slice it, because the Nistrum are one of the smallest and weakest of all Kazon sects, and whatever method of help Voyager receives will probably expose Seska's activities. But believe it or not, this sordid little exchange is only the second worst thing happening around here, because this is where Neelix introduced the crew to his favorite Delta Quadrant staple, the insidious Leola root.
We had a fine Leola root soup tonight.
Back on Voyager, Seska starts laying some groundwork with former squeeze Chakotay, no doubt an attempt to bring him on side should suspicion ever fall her way.
You looted the food reserves?
involving him in a pantry heist without his consent, trying to weasel her way back into a relationship with him, and then threatening him with the prospect of other suitors when he doesn't return her feelings.
I have had my eye on young Ensign Kim.
As if emotional blackmail was ever a great way of making people care about you.
Start running now.
As for the Kazon's replicator aspirations, without Seska giving them any idea of how to integrate it into their systems, it predictably ends in disaster. Naturally, Grand Inquisitor Tuvok is all over this shit, as if Seska could ever get away with anything with him on the case.
Someone from this ship has covertly given technology to the Kazon.
And she's immediately the prime suspect due to her proximity to the Kazon when they were planetside. Personally, I think he should be investigating the most serious crime that occurred. Seska's manipulation of Chakotay surprisingly pays dividends immediately when he tips her off about the situation.
There's some concern about you.
Causing her to go straight to sickbay to visit the surviving Kazon, which can surely only create further suspicion. And since she's been withholding a blood sample from the doctor in an attempt to hide her true physiology, you'd think she'd be avoiding sickbay like the phage.
I was warned never to donate blood for transfusion.
All the more reason we should have your blood on file.
She then makes things even worse by transporting over to the Kazon vessel without authorization, supposedly as a means of clearing her name, which of course Simp Kote buys into wholesale.
It is conceivable that she's gone to the Kazon ship to destroy evidence that might implicate her.
She's gone back to the Kazon ship to prove herself to us. Can't you see that?
But to anyone not under her spell, it's patently obvious she's just covering her tracks. Thankfully, she suffers a bit of instant karma, seriously injured after the replicator wreck explodes in her face. So she's back in sickbay unconscious, which is obviously a great opportunity for the doc to finally do that blood work.
I'll need a dermal regenerator, run a full blood scan.
Seska has also been attempting to frame Carrie as a traitor from the outset, but unbeknownst to her, she's been baited into outing herself.
Oh, you took us all around the system and back again before we could locate the source. But it was this station, in sickbay.
And of course the doctor just isn't buying any of her BS excuses for why her blood appears to be Cardassian.
There's no way any childhood virus or Cardassian bone marrow transplant can explain away the genetic markers in your blood. You are Cardassian.
And so, after refusing to keep a low profile and doing everything possible to incriminate herself, Seska is forced to throw in completely with the Kazon Nostrum, where unsurprisingly she quickly seduces their leader Kala. And what better match for a headstrong, capable woman to pick for herself than an ignorant, simple-minded woman hater from a strictly patriarchal society.
I am the leader of this sect. You are only a woman.
Surely staying on Voyager and being confined to quarters is better than this. Though admittedly, they will be extremely easy for Seska to control. It's just a shame her manipulation skills require her targets to be total dumbasses.
The Kazon Nostrum are powerful again. First Maj Jal Kulla has technology that no other sect possesses.
Taking advantage of Kulla's lust for power, Seska knows exactly when to massage his ego and when to capitulate.
I will determine what we decide and when.
Yes, Maj.
She quickly works her way into the position of Shadow Captain, helped in no small part by her filling the severe skill gaps around here.
Maybe we can resonate a coherent polaron pulse off his hull. Get a lock on him that way. Initiate a continuous stream of pulses from the lateral deflectors.
This Kulla guy doesn't have a strategic or political bone in his body. And so, with a small army of brutes at her back, Seska turns her attention back to Voyager, intending to seize it for herself, and then somehow get back to the Alpha Quadrant. I think. She may hate having to live on their terms, but it seems she just can't live without those Starfleet luxuries.
I have no intention of raising my child on a Kazon ship.
I can somewhat understand the obsession with Voyager. It's a powerful ship full of rare technologies, at least in the Delta Quadrant. It could definitely bolster any fleet, or you could make a fortune simply selling it in parts. And with Seska at the helm, the Kazon will obviously be far more effective than they normally would be. But is the potential reward really worth the risk? It said it would take only 3 Nostrum vessels to defeat Voyager, so this one vessel alone isn't that much of a game changer.
Even with our superior defense capabilities, we cannot prevail against 3 Kazon warships.
But I will admit, having Seska at the helm pays off almost immediately when the Nostrum managed to swipe a transporter from Voyager.
Goodbye, Chakotay. Lovely to see you again.
Then Seska teases Chakotay enough to inspire an unauthorized one-man mission to destroy the stolen tech. And of course, this defiance of the other important woman in his life only manages to turn Seska on, showing us how confused her feelings are towards Chakotay by giving him affection in one moment, then claiming she's always used him the next.
But I've always been less interested in you than in the information you could provide me with.
Perhaps a sign of an internal conflict within Seska, resisting her infatuation with Chakotay due to the guilt she feels for falling for an enemy. But hey, if she genuinely wanted to be with him, you're on the other side of the galaxy now, what have you got to lose? But if that was ever her desire, she sure has a terrible way of expressing her feelings. She's done nothing except drive the guy away, and this pointless obsession with him does little except risk compromising her more important schemes.
Your interpersonal activities are delaying our progress.
For example, keeping the guy alive just gives them the opportunity to trash her whenever Color's around.
She's using you.
I'm the one who's using her.
You've done an even better job on him than you did on me.
She's just lucky Color is too dense or love-struck to hear anything he's saying. Meanwhile, Seska and Color are trying to barter their way into an alliance with the Relora, one of the most powerful of all Kazon sects. The trouble is, they're not just promising the transporter, but Voyager itself, which they are currently not in possession of. So naturally, the Relora come to the correct conclusion that they can take Voyager on their own. In retaliation, Seska decides to beam them into space, thinking this would win over the entire Relora sect.
You said the Relora would join us. I should never have listened to you.
I was wrong.
I mean, they are dumb, but they're not exclusively governed by rule of the strong. There was no reason to think that would work. They're lucky the Relora didn't wipe them out. So Seska and Color change tack, focusing on forging an alliance with the smaller, weaker sects. But again, they're bargaining with something they don't even possess, and then Voyager turns up to make that point all the more clear. So after focusing on keeping Chakotay on board, which at this stage is almost completely pointless, Seska takes off claiming she can better fight Voyager from the bridge. But in reality, she was either cowering somewhere, jacking Chakotay's DNA, or perhaps setting up a local dispersion field or whatever to stop Chakotay from being transported. She wasn't helping Color, that's for sure, because all the first Majas are transported onto Voyager and forced to give up the stolen goods. So failing in her primary goals, aboard Seska makes a pathetic attempt to steal victory by pivoting back to messing with Chakotay, sending him this horrific message.
While you were unconscious, I took the liberty of extracting a sample of your DNA. I impregnated myself with it.
What a charmer. Does this seem like a great time to bring a child into the universe? Color, being an oaf, might not respond very well to this pregnancy news, and you better hope it's not a girl. You might be ejected out the nearest airlock. Do you see any Kazon women around here? This is a hell of a risk with little reward other than to put Chipotle a bit off and maintain a tenuous link to Voyager. So what's the end goal now? Seize Voyager and live happily ever after with Color at your side and Chakotay locked in his quarters to be used at your convenience? The next time we encounter Seska, Voyager is under attack from some other Kazon sects, causing Janeway to have a moral crisis and ironically decide on a similar course of action to what Seska was covertly trying to bring about all along. Contacting Seska to form a temporary and limited alliance with the Kazon Nostrum, Seska suffers a rare loss of control over her man,
I won't have a woman dictate terms to me.
who just can't tolerate being dictated to by a woman, even though that's pretty much his life now, driving Janeway to align herself with the sworn enemy of all Kazon, the Trabe. Luckily for them, Janeway won't even allow her enemies to be killed if it means she gets some of the blame. Meanwhile, Seska has been grooming her ace in the hole in the form of idiot traitor Jonas, another moron who seems to think he has a big bright future with the Kazon Nostrum. But both of them have forgotten once again that Tuvok is head of security around here. Don't even bother. Tuvok and co create another deception to oust this new spy, and this time they cruelly leave Chakotay out of the loop, making this at least the third time he's had someone under his command working towards a hidden agenda. So a supposedly disgruntled Tom heads off to pilot a Talaxian freighter, as if that's a believable cover story for a speedster with a short attention span. As hoped, he's picked up by Seska, responding to Jonas's intel. Seska, all too familiar with subterfuge, makes a big song and dance about not trusting him, but then she's leaving him alone with a computer console, and they didn't even bother to pat him down. Granted, this lack of proper oversight would appear to be a method of determining his motives, but Seska's intention doesn't matter, because Tom got the information he was looking for, and no one around here is competent enough to stop him from getting back to Voyager.
It's Michael Jonas! He's sabotage the ship.
Meanwhile, Neelix gets his first known kill, and surprisingly it wasn't from Leola root poisoning, vaporizing Jonas in a plasma fire, although he pretty much jumped in there himself. Mate, if you can't even contend with Neelix in a scuffle, you wouldn't have fared well with the Kazon. A quick death was more a mercy than anything. Finally, Seska gets a temporary win after using her inside knowledge and connection to Chakotay to lure Voyager into a trap. Taking advantage of Federation benevolence, they get one of Seska's weaponized aides on board, who then blows himself up in the midst of a Kazon attack. So Seska and Cullen surprisingly achieve their main objective, finally seizing Voyager. But we all know this ain't gonna last. New Mother Seska is positively radiant with power. Most of the Kazon grunts seem to answer directly to her now.
Take them to a cargo bay. Have the whole crew brought there. Check all quarters.
But again, proximity to Chakotay comes with its own inherent risks, especially when you're lying to your significant other about everything. Initially telling Cullen the child is his, she's now changed her story to explain the child's apparent human appearance, claiming Chakotay forced himself on her.
A man who would violate a woman under his own command.
Is that what she told you?
Luckily for Seska, Cullen is as dense as ever, so they leave the crew to rough it with the locals on the nearest habitable world. Seska losing her grasp on Chakotay, probably forced to give him up in an effort to cover her deceptions, messing up her only opportunity to ensnare him once and for all.
It appears we have lost our sex appeal.
But if you think freeing herself of Chakotay would improve her productivity, you'd be mistaken, because the second Seska gets everything else she wanted, she seems to become extremely complacent, or perhaps she's just suffering from a terminal case of baby brain.
May we presume that this conflict is also responsible for the weakening of your powers?
She didn't even do a basic computer check of the crew complement to make sure everyone was off the ship. No, she just gets the Kazon to check all the quarters manually, seemingly forgetting the ship is a rabbit warren of Jeffries tubes. She's lucky half the crew didn't become sleeper agents.
Computer, what is the crew complement?
There are 89 Kazon
89.
and 1 Betazoid on board.
She also doesn't rescind Starfleet personnel's access to the computer systems, nor does she secure all communication channels.
Computer, emergency medical priority 114. Delete the signature of Mr. Suter's comm badge from the system. There is to be no record of his being on board.
They've also failed to call in any Nistrim vessels to consolidate power around Voyager. They used 3 vessels to take the ship. Where did they go? Leaving her vulnerable to similar subversion and attacks that allowed the Nistrim to take her in the first place. She also trusts the Doctor's word that he is not capable of elaborate deception, underestimating him once again, despite the fact he was clever enough to out her true identity.
The Kazon Nistrim have taken Voyager. Does your program have any problem with that?
One humanoid is pretty much the same as another from a holographic point of view.
Tell me, is it within your program's capabilities to lie or be deceptive?
Bald-faced lying, calculated deceit. I don't have much experience with that sort of thing.
She should be well aware of what this guy is capable of, yet she still seems to be thinking of him as a standard EMH. She should have deactivated him or reset his program the second she took over Voyager. And Kazon science may be behind, but surely an interstellar society should be advanced enough to do a paternity test. Instead, it's left to the Doctor to inform Seska the baby is actually Cullen's, a development she seems supremely disappointed with.
Maj Cullen will be so pleased.
I mean, yeah, to be honest, I wouldn't want to breed with them either. Look, I'm not sure how she messed this one up, but shouldn't that actually be good news? This poor baby always seemed more a pawn than anything else. Now, as a boy, he has a devoted father, and surely this is a more effective method of keeping Cullen under heel. Whether she likes it or not, Seska is pretty much settled down now. Through her actions, she's got herself stuck in Kazon space, fluffing around with the Nistrim, arguing with Cullen. I see no way any of this will result in her getting back to the Alpha Quadrant, short of killing Cullen and somehow officially taking over the Nistrim, then forcing them all to leave Kazon space, which doesn't seem a very likely prospect. Her entire reason for her disillusionment with Voyager was based on her wish to get home as soon as possible, but now she's trapped herself in a prison of her own making.
I don't understand. I thought you wanted to go home.
And so free from any security impediments, the Doctor and Suter are left to run amok, sabotaging Voyager at every opportunity. And by the way, this Suter guy has been massively underutilized. His combat skills alone should have seen him promoted to Berserker and sent to the front line on all dangerous away missions. The poor Kazon, completely out of their depth on Voyager, can barely even recognize they're being sabotaged, though eventually Seska finally takes the measures she should have implemented the second she got on Voyager. So the Doctor admits it was him and only him the entire time, outing himself as indeed capable of elaborate deception. Yet Seska again buys into every piece of BS the Doctor now feeds her, and he's making it obvious by sounding more disingenuous than usual.
I did sabotage the ship, all by myself. With the computer's help, of course. I've had your people crawling through the bowels of the ship for hours looking for an intruder.
And also note, Seska has these doofuses pointing their standard phaser rifles directly at the Doctor, as if that would do anything.
You are not invulnerable, hologram.
This final act of misdirection allowing Suda to scuttle the phasers during Tom's attack, leading to an overload which triggers some explodium in Seska's console. And so thanks to the efforts of Tom, some Talaxians, the Doc, Suda, and Seska's gross incompetence, the Nistrom's grip on Voyager is quickly lost. And in her final moments, Seska shows a redeeming quality as she crawls to protect her baby. But Color does one better by showing that he genuinely seemed to love Seska despite viewing her as one of these uppity Alpha Quadrant womanfolk. And I'm assuming he's been informed of his newfound fatherhood because he takes responsibility for his son when he could have easily abandoned the child to the care of the do-goodniks on Voyager. You know you're truly a hopeless villain when a violent misogynist and a murderous psychopath both get a more meaningful redemption arc. Seska, like many a villain, practically brought herself down by overestimating her own abilities while underestimating those of her opponents. But as is typical in many sci-fi and fantasy TV shows, characters often don't stay dead for long. It's just a shame her second and third wins go just as badly as the first. Point 3. Seska continues to fail even after her death. So thanks to the ever-present space magic of Star Trek, Seska comes back to haunt the crew in 2 different incarnations. And unsurprisingly, both these versions of Seska show the very flaws that brought her down in the first place.
Even within chaotic systems, there is a pattern of limited predictability.
Firstly, she shows up in hollow form when Tuvok is compelled to finish his Maquis mutiny program. He wrote this thing as a training aid, but thanks to annoyingly human social pressure and an overly enthusiastic yet creatively bankrupt Tom, he's been forced to revisit it as a crass hollow novel. And I'm afraid those won't be the only irritants Tuvok will suffer today, because the second he reopens the narrative parameters, it triggers a secret addition to the program made by Seska, which seems designed exclusively to kill him and whoever else makes the mistake of switching it on. Trapped, isolated, and with the safety protocols disengaged, it's the perfect opportunity to get some pointless revenge.
A holographic representation of Seska, one of the Maquis shipmates you betrayed.
Why she would be so salty at Tuvok for betraying the Maquis when she was also betraying them, I have no idea. Her confused motivation's one of many traits that show she programmed Holo Seska a bit too realistically. Case in point, this Seska also enjoys playing with her food.
Any attempt to generate intimacy between us will not be successful.
Gloating and toying with her captors when she should have just executed them immediately, allowing Janeway and co to start making helpful additions to the program. She then falls for a similar rifle tampering trick she herself got Holo Janeway with. And predictably, Seska programmed Holo Chakotay to be completely submissive to her. She's as bad as Janeway.
Delete the wife.
I'm betting Seska spent some quality time with this hologram before she bailed on Voyager.
You're in love with a computer subroutine.
Which brings us to the worst part of this whole distraction. Seska made these program additions 1 month before she left the ship. Keep in mind, she was forced to leave suddenly after having her cover blown, so she programmed this trap at a time when she had no immediate plans to leave Voyager. For all she knows, Tuvok would get back to writing this thing straight away. He had a whole month to trigger this trap, which would inevitably draw the attention of the entire ship. Perhaps not exposing her as a spy, but at least exposing her as a vengeful enemy.
Given your actions, I have no choice but to consider you a potential threat.
Things don't go any more smoothly for Seska's second post-death incarnation, when Voyager enters a temporal distortion, shifting each section of the ship into a different time period, one of which happens to be when Seska and the Kazon were in control of Voyager. After realizing that future Chakotay's mere presence implies her own downfall, instead of working together to solve this immediate temporal threat, she instead decides the best course of action is to pull off some ridiculous ridiculous timeline convergence hocus pocus.
Recalibrating her pulse to bring the ship into temporal sync with my time frame.
And naturally, she seems to have bluffed her way through the maths.
If you make even the slightest miscalculation, you'll destroy the ship and kill everyone.
What other choice do I have?
She might be talented, but I'm sure even Starfleet's greatest minds would struggle with those temporal mechanics. It very well may be impossible. Her overconfidence now risking everyone's life and perhaps reality itself.
That is a large step for someone whose mental abilities are still undisciplined.
If I were going to attempt anything at all, it would be to swipe Chakotay's time inoculation and stow away in his section of the ship, in the hope that you'll remain there once the timeline is restored. Assuming it works, now you're way closer to home. But thankfully Seska won't get to attempt her ludicrous plan as her final error reveals itself. Her undervaluing of the importance of having friends.
Oh, I believe in cooperation, as long as it benefits me.
Chakotay and Alt Janeway are channeling Rambo and possibly Suda, so they're instantly more likable. Organizing their own counter-mutiny against Seska using members of the crew from all over the timeline. An event that reaches its climax when Peak Drone 7 of 9 Tertiary Adjunct of Unimatrix 01 comes out of nowhere and Borg chokes Seska back down to her own reality and out of the show for good.